Welcome. This is the third video in a series I call Radagon is Loki, wherein we explore the numerous similarities between Loki, the shape-shifting trickster god of deception, and Radagon, the male half of Queen Marika. If you haven't watched my previous videos in this series, please do so to have a better understanding of what's presented in this video. My last video analyzed several areas in the western part of the Weeping Peninsula as well as parts of Stormvale Castle to uncover evidence tying Radagon to the Night of the Black Knives, an incident in which Godwyn the Golden was murdered by Black Knife assassins, triggering the Shattering, a war between the demigods. The material we will explore in this video was intended to be included in my last video but was cut for time. This video will refer to that video several times, so I recommend you watch it too. In this video, we will conduct a similar analysis of another area of the game, the isolated area I refer to as the Lightning Plane in Altus Plateau and the Stormcaller Church. We are looking for more evidence connecting Radagon to the death of Godwyn the Golden. To reach Stormcaller Church, we must pass through a unique and isolated region atop a raised plateau. The vibes here are oddly similar to the Weeping Peninsula. Whereas in the Weeping Peninsula the weather is constant rain, here there is constant lightning, due to the many fields of fulgur bloom we find here. Fulgur bloom is a yellow flower that grows in lightning-struck lands, imbued with traces of lightning's essence. Starting at the Rampart Side Path site of Grace, northwest of the walls surrounding Lanedale Royal Capital, we must ride west through the Fulgur Bloom while lightning strikes. If you follow the dirt path directly west, you arrive at the Sainted Hero's Grave. A Black Knife assassin guards the entrance. This boss drops one of the actual Black Knives, imbued by Rani with the Rune of Death and used to slay Godwyn. But in the Sainted Hero's Grave itself, the items and enemies found do not appear to have much connection to Godwyn. In my previous video, we discussed the significance of the boss locked inside the Weeping Everjail, an ancient hero of Zamor. Coincidentally, the boss of the Sainted Hero's Grave is another ancient hero of Zamor, but this one is protecting the roots of the Great Tree, where bodies are interred for Erd Tree burial. As detailed in my previous video, the Knights of Zamor are found in the mountaintops of the Giants. They sided with the Golden Army during Queen Marika's war against the Giants. This ancient hero might well have been a former ally of Godfrey or Marika, or even Radagon himself. Emerging from the Sainted Hero's Grave, we can see two Lanedale soldiers standing on a large boulder just off to the right. The one who is standing stares directly at the Stormcaller Church. To the right of the two soldiers is a sword monument. As discussed previously, I believe these sword monuments mark the locations of famous historical battles. This one happens to be guarded by a Lanedale knight, who sits quietly among the stone markers. When provoked, he uses dragon cult incantations in combat. The sword monument reads, "The routing of the ancient dragons, Godwyn the Golden fought to the last, earning the friendship of dread Fortisax." This is the only site marking a battle between the Erd Tree forces and the ancient dragons who attacked the capital. This is the largest quantity of swords we see at any sword monument in the lands between, meaning the sacrifices in the battle that took place here were far greater than any other battle. Notice that we don't see any corpses of ancient dragons here. As we know from the giant corpse of Grandsax that still lies in the capital, the ancient dragons do not age and their bodies do not decay, due to their immortal stone scales. If the Golden Army fought the ancient dragons here, we should see ancient dragon corpses if any were felled, but we see none on the Lightning Plains. This means the losses were completely on the Lanedale side until Godwyn intervened and defeated Fortisax. Or perhaps the phrase "fought to the last" means that Godwyn was literally the last man standing from the Golden Order forces. The fact that he fought alone against Fortisax and defeated him makes Godwyn absolutely legendary. If one goes uphill to the northeast, Fortisax's sister, Lanciax herself, flies down out of the sky to attack. She drops Lanciax's glaive, which describes how she communed or taught dragon lightning incantations to the knights. The spirit of an artist appears on this same hill. We must first find the champion song painting in the sinking building on the east side of the shaded castle. This artist drops the harp bow, which has a description referencing Rykard, the Lord of Blasphemy, so it's evident that the artist is meant to be pointing at the Volcano Manor. However, I looked at this with my camera tools, and in my opinion, it seems the artist is really pointing at the Sainted Hero's grave and the Black Knife assassin we find there. But even if I'm wrong, Rykard is also identified as a possible co-conspirator in the Night of the Black Knives by the description of the blasphemous claw. As we explored in my last video, here again we have the ghost of an artist pointing toward more connections to the Night of the Black Knives. Down the slope from the sword monument, we find Stormcaller Church. The name Stormcaller harkens back to the Stormcaller Ash of War, which we find at Stormvale Castle, in the area with all the jars. A Lanedale knight on horseback guards the entrance. 2 Lanedale foot soldiers ambush the player who enters via the doorway. We find the Dragon Bolt blessing here in a chest with the description, "Only those loved by dragons can survive the ordeal of cladding their bodies in lightning." We find lots of gravelstone below the Radagon statue, as we know from climbing up the wing of Grandsax, or while exploring crumbling Far Missoula. Gravelstone is actually clusters of dragon scales, and indicates the presence of the ancient dragons. Does this mean an ancient dragon recently visited the Stormcaller Church? On a corpse near the gravel stone items, we find 10 lightning great bolts. These are great bolts tipped with a clump of gravelstone shards. We cannot craft these items, but we can find them in about a dozen locations, and we can purchase them from the hermit merchant on the mountaintops of the giants. It's interesting that this poor victim died while standing close to a cluster of gravel stones, while holding great bolts also tipped with gravel stones. It's almost like this person, unlike us, was able to craft lightning great bolts and was in the process of doing so when he was murdered, probably by the 2 foot soldiers here. Finally, there is no site of grace at this church. Does this have any meaning? And if so, what is it? I'll cover this next, among my conclusions. The area west of the Rampart Side Path Site of Grace contains several references to Godwyn, mainly referencing the heroic acts he took in life. When the royal capital was attacked by Grandsax, he probably aided the Golden Order forces in killing the monster. He then led an army outside the city walls to confront the other ancient dragons, where they gathered on the lightning plains amongst the Fulgurbloom. Godwyn and his men fought the ancient dragons, but it was a massacre. Godwyn's men were slain to the last. Godwyn himself challenged the dread Fortisax, and miraculously, he won. But rather than kill Fortisax, he befriended this most fearsome of the ancient dragons. As a result of this truce, Fortisax's sister, Lanciax, took human form and began to teach lightning incantations to the remaining knights of the capital, forming what is known as the Dragon Cult of the capital. With these incantations, the Golden Army once again became the mightiest force in the lands between. Indeed, all the soldiers and knights of the capital use Dragon Cult incantations to this day. As I speculated in my previous video, Godwyn's successes outshone Radagon. Radagon had led the invasion of Liurnia, was repelled twice, and then repented his sins against Rennala in the Church of Vows using a celestial tear of the Eternal Cities. Radagon then married Rennala and had 3 children, while teaching himself all the sorceries available at Raya Lucaria Academy. Then he left Rennala and returned to the Erdtree capital, replaced Godfrey as Marika's husband, and became second Elden Lord. He established Golden Order fundamentalism, and with the help of his new son Mikola, began creating new incantations that utilize intelligence as well as faith. But it was all for naught, as the Golden Order fundamentalists became horrifying zealots under the leadership of Rykard, operating out of the Volcano Manor. Mikola abandoned Golden Order fundamentalism because it could not help Malenia overcome the Scarlet Rot. I believe the attack of the ancient dragons occurred after those events because the Lanedale soldiers and knights still use the Dragon Cult incantations taught to them by Lanciax, courtesy of Godwyn's bravery. None of them use the incantations Radagon created. I believe that on the lightning plains near the Stormcaller Church, we are seeing evidence of Godwyn's greatest achievements. The largest sword monument site in the game honors the battle Godwyn and his men fought against the ancient dragons. His former ally Lanciax still guards the summit of the area, and those who benefited from Godwyn's bravery still come here to pay respects. But there is also more evidence in this area with ties to Godwyn's death. A Black Knife assassin guards the entrance of the sainted hero's grave. What is she trying to protect? Or what does she want to accomplish here? If she's trying to prevent us from going inside, why? There's no evidence against the Black Knife assassins inside the sainted hero's grave, and nothing relating directly to Godwyn's death. But the boss of this dungeon is an ancient hero of Zamor. Is she trying to prevent us from killing it? The boss drops the ancient dragon knight Kristoff Ashes, but Kristoff's lore is tied to Godefroy the Grafted, not Godwyn. We really have no idea what she is doing here on the Lightning Plains, except that she is tied directly to the death of Godwyn. She even bears one of the knives used to carve one half of the curse mark of death into his back on that fateful night of the Black Knives. Finally, we can analyze the Stormcaller Church. The structure is located at the lowest point of this entire area, which I believe is saying something. It's as if the church is weighed down by some heavy force, pushing it lower than the rest of the area. The church contains a statue of Radagon, not Marika. And as I mentioned, 2 foot soldiers ambush us from behind as we enter. This is the only church in the entirety of the Lands Between where this happens. During this ambush, a statue of Radagon looks on, as if supervising the event. This ambush has already worked once, as there is a dead body on the ground facing Radagon. Behind one of the ambushing soldiers, we find a chest containing the Dragon Bolt Blessing. The description: only those loved by dragons can survive the ordeal of cladding their bodies in lightning, may refer to Godwyn being loved by dragons. I was going to say that this item is contained in a chest within Radagon's full view, but then I noticed something funny. I confirmed it with my tools by moving the camera directly in front of Radagon's face. From his perspective, you can't see this chest at all behind the columns on the left. As I said in my video comparing Radagon to Loki, if Radagon is the true and secret architect of the Knight of the Black Knives, then his motive would surely be his insane jealousy of Godwyn's immense contributions to the Golden Order and Leyndell royal capital. Loki's motive in killing Baldur was also his own jealousy. Is it because Radagon was jealous of Godwyn and the way the dragons came to love him that he can't bear to see this item describing those loved by the dragons tucked in the corner of the church? The entire scene around this church is very interesting for anyone looking deeper into the lore of Radagon. Here, on an entire plain full of artifacts of Godwyn's history, we find a church named after an art of war of Stormvale Castle, where we previously found a visage of Godwyn as the Prince of Death in the burial chamber. The church is guarded out front by a knight on horseback, patrolling here as if to prevent anyone undesirable from entering the church. But why though? Why not just let the person wander into the church and be ambushed by the guards inside? I think that the main reason you post a knight to patrol outside the scene of an ambush is because you've set up this ambush with a particular target in mind. The knight is here to prevent the wrong person from entering the church and springing the trap. But if the right person were to approach, the knight would just wave them in. Once they walk through the doors, trap springs and the person is taken off guard, all while Radagon watches. The trap has already sprung and one individual has suffered the consequences of wandering in here, perhaps to pick up the gravel stones at Radagon's feet. We can guess this by the fact that he's holding lightning great bolts, which are tipped with gravel stones. The gravel stones are arranged around the foot of Radagon's statue in an interesting pattern. I'm not sure what this pattern means, but there are 7 of them here, with a sacred tier in the middle. There are 7 shard bearers we are meant to slay, with 7 great runes we are meant to collect. So perhaps this is the significance. But like I mentioned earlier, a dragon has clearly been here, many times perhaps, and that's why we see gravel stones here. Were these left by Lanciax or her brother Fortisax? And if so, what were they hoping to find in this church? Some consolation after Godwyn's death? Or perhaps, could they have been searching for the site where he was ambushed? There is no site of grace in this church. What does that mean? This isn't the only church without a site of grace. There's also the second church of Marika not far away. There are also the Rose Church and the Church of Irith, both in Liurnia, Kalu Baptismal Church in the Weeping Peninsula, and Technically, the Chapel of Anticipation is also a church without a site of grace. The Chapel of Anticipation is where we start the game, called back here by the guidance of grace itself. I dare say the reason we don't find a site of grace here is because it has leapt into our very pocket. The starting player finds a memory of grace already in their possession, as if the site of grace that might have once been in this church decided to travel with us. The Kalu Baptismal Church is in the Ailing village, where all the inhabitants and the local rat population have been taken over by the frenzied flame, the madness which spreads like a plague. Could this be why grace has abandoned this church? The Church of Erith also provides no grace. This is where we meet Sorcerer Tops, a crestfallen and mediocre mage who's been locked out of Raya Lucaria. However, he does serve as a kind of guide to the Liurnia region, providing a lot of small talk to the Tarnished. Is that perhaps why grace abandoned this church? Because Tops is such a buzzkill? Or because he provides all the guidance that we need here? The Rose Church is the second location where we speak to White Mask Vare, and is where he offers the Tarnished a chance to join Mogwyn Dynasty. Inside the church we find several blood roses and a lesser sanguine noble. It's clear this church has been intentionally desecrated by the Lord of Blood and his followers, and so we find no grace or sacred tears here. We find a similar situation at the Second Church of America, where we encounter rotten strays patrolling outside and blood roses growing inside. That's because Eleonora, Violent Bloody Finger, is here, having just slaughtered Bloody Finger Hunter Yura. And if not, then another lesser sanguine noble is here. Like the Rose Church, the Second Church has just begun to fall under the influence of the Formless Mother. Grace has already left this church, but the Statue of Marika and the Sacred Tear are still here. Grace in Elden Ring represents something like the Holy Spirit from the Catholic faith, calling us back to the lands between and providing guidance on where to go. Except for the Rose Church, they all still have sacred tears, which are the blessings of the Erd Tree, collected in a chalice, and the true object of worship in every church. Churches in the Realm of Shadow do not have sacred tears. Many of them have Scadu Tree fragments, which is the object of worship replacing sacred tears. So, for the few churches in the lands between that do not have sites of grace, there is a clear reason why, such as a force of corruption. But at the Church of Erith and at the Stormcaller Church, the reason is not so clear. This video isn't about the Church of Erith, so let's focus on Stormcaller. As I've been hinting at, I believe that Stormcaller Church may be the site where Godwyn the Golden was ambushed. I believe this site was chosen because of its proximity to the area where Godwyn achieved his greatest triumphs. The knight who patrols outside was posted there to allow Godwyn through and to turn back all others. The Black Knife assassins who leapt on Godwyn from behind the door have been replaced by Lanedale soldiers because the Tarnished encountering two black knives here would be a little too revealing. But one of the assassins rests at the entrance of the sainted hero's grave, having almost, but not quite, returned to the scene of the crime. And I believe Godwyn's body location has been replaced by this corpse, holding lightning great bolts fashioned from the scales of the dragons who loved him so much. Was he perhaps lured here to receive the dragon bolt blessing contained in the nearby chest? Who knows? But the ancient dragons have visited this church repeatedly to try and determine what happened to Godwyn here, or perhaps to mourn. That's why there's no site of grace at this church, because of what happened here to Marika's bravest, mightiest, and most beloved son. The blessing of grace has left this place following what happened, all under Radagon's watchful eye. I believe the Stormcaller Church is where Radagon watched Godwyn suffer a horrible fate, as he watched the Black Knife assassins carve one half of the curse mark of death into his back, turning him into the first of the soulless demigods, the Prince of Death. If you're not convinced, here's an extra little bit of evidence. Directly east of the Stormcaller Church, there is a lonely flower on the hill, a Mikkola's lily, its wilting petals facing the church. I believe the rarity and placement of these flowers throughout the lands between are meant to show us signs of the travels of Mikkola at the point in his youth where he was experimenting with unalloyed gold in his desperate attempts to cure Melania of her scarlet rot. I personally believe that Mikkola followed Radagon here in secret, hiding here and watching from this hill as Radagon and the Black Knife assassins ambush Godwyn in the Stormcaller Church. I also wonder if this might have been part of the reason that Miquella abandoned Golden Order fundamentalism, abandoned his father, and abandoned the royal capital in favor of heading north to grow the Halig tree. And perhaps this is when Miquella began to form his plan to become a god in his own right. I believe this might be why he engraved the following on the golden epitaph sword, a sword made to commemorate the death of Godwyn the Golden, the first of the demigods to die, infused with the humble prayer of a young boy. "O brother, Lord brother, please die a true death." Thank you for watching this video, and if you watched my previous videos in this series, thank you very much. It means the world to me to talk about Elden Ring and share my research and the discoveries I've made. Please share your thoughts down in the comments. I don't have many more videos planned in this series. After all, there's not much more information available about Radagon, and that's likely on purpose, and all according to his plan. I'm currently analyzing these statues throughout the lands between to determine if this could be Radagon, as some theorize. And I'm also outlining a video discussing all of Marika's and Radagon's children, and their stories as being parallels of their parents. If you're interested in those, please consider subscribing to receive notifications when those videos go live.